Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's training. Think you're gonna have a lot of fun with this one. And yeah, just gonna give people a chance to jump in. Looks like a bunch of you are already on here. Um, Let me know in the chat if you can hear me and maybe where you're coming from. That'll make things helpful. And really, the whole point of this session is to have you walk away with something that is useful for you, that's helpful for you, and a self check to know the first step one you can take in order to improve your data quality and where it might be, where you might have the biggest need. Give yourself a self assessment and see where it goes. So let's go ahead and do it. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is just, the reality is that your marketing data is dirty. And today you're going to discover what your highest priority fix is, what it can be, and where to go. And it should become fairly obvious, but if it's not, that's why we have the chat and how we can chat between each other as well and learn things and to go from there. So by the end of this training, you're going to do four things. You're going to know what your silent data killers are, what is clean data, your own clean data score. So you're going to do a self-assessment here, and then the one upgrade that fixes most of these problems. If I were to summarize it into one thing, that's what the one upgrade is going to be. Now, the old way that we used to do things, this is before 2020 and 2021, was that we would be able to install a pixel, let's say Meta's pixel, the Google Ads tag, as they call it, put your Google Analytics on your site, and it would allow you to send conversions to your ad platforms. And, whether it's through your Google Analytics goal import or through direct conversions from your pixels and things like that. And then your ad platform would automatically help you spend more money on ads that were profitable. And what I mean by that is automated bid strategies and just the different ways of bidding would say, okay, go find us more high quality, or go find us more leads at a certain cost per acquisition. Go find us more profitable things based on return on ad spend, whatever it was. So that's how this worked. And as a teacher, as an educator, it's very fun to say, just do these things and it's going to work for you, because it's a lot easier than explaining the nuance of the world that we live in today, for example. And so now there is a way to get some of the same results. It just takes a little bit more upfront work, but it does unlock and enable you to do a lot more. So what's happened is that this idea, I call it the sprinkle pixels era, that is over. And unfortunately, it's over because of the three things, really. Actually, there's three things and then there's three more things. So I'll start with the first three things. So Apple has app tracking transparency, or they call it ATT. Now, if you've ever been on Apple on an iOS and you go to an app for the first time, there's a thing that says ask app not to track, and then there's allow. And ask app not to track is what we mostly select, because why would you ask an app to track you? So I don't know about you, but I pretty much religiously push that button. And unfortunately, it's good for you if you don't want to be followed around the internet, but it's not great for you if you're a marketer or an advertiser, or your business relies upon knowing the activity of somebody to be able to target them for ads. Meta, when this was implemented, they saw a 37% drop in click-through rate right after ATT was introduced. And that drop in click-through rate, it permeates and extends through everything else you're doing too. So, meaning that your click-through rates go down, well then they might not show your ads as often, or your return on ad spend goes down, because if you're clicking less, if your click-through rates go down because the targeting is not as relevant, you're not showing as many ads, or your total revenue could have gone down. There's all kinds of different ripple effects that happen when the targeting isn't effective, meaning that you're going after the wrong customers, you're not meeting your budget, maybe you pull back your spending, you spend less money because it's not working, and so on. And so ads get more expensive, and even if people are still buying from you, just not as many. Then we have this whole thing. This is a stat from Backlinko that somewhere between 31 and 42% of internet users have some form of ad blocking. That's a pretty high stat, right? Pretty tremendous number that they're showing here. But even if you don't use an ad blocker yourself, or you're not sure whether you believe that number or not, your browser could be doing it too. Safari and Firefox do that. By default, they block cookies, third-party cookies, I mean. Now, Chrome said that they're going to do it, and they said they're not going to do it. They've been going back and forth because it's their entire business, the Google advertising business. They can't kill the golden goose, so they're saying, yeah, we're going to kill it, and then they're like, actually, we can't. And so that goes back and forth. But really, a decent percentage of people are blocking traffic no matter what. And so even if you've installed all the pixels you have, this is why the pre 2021 techniques are not working, because the visitors become invisible to your tracking when somewhere between, we're seeing 31 to 42% in this slide, but whatever the number is, it could be 40%. I think 40% is a pretty widely accepted number of just people that are not being tracked, all the way up to if you're in the GDPR areas and you have consent, consent meaning the cookie banners. Sometimes it's 60, 70% of people are just not even being tracked by traditional methods, which is crazy to think about, but also the reality we face. And so this is what a big part of the dirty data. And when you have dirty data or things aren't working, then you are only sending partial truth to your company, to your ad platforms, to your email marketing tools, to anything that we've been using forever that established Web 2.0, which is the version of the internet where companies can actually make money online. They're not seeing everything, and they've been trained, though. They've come up in an era where they did have access to everything possible. They could drink from the fire hose of data and decide what to do. And it's left a lot of companies and a lot of advertisers and a lot of us reeling, figuring out what to do. Because with partial truth means when you feed Google or Meta partial data, they can only find some of the customers, not all of them. And when they can only find some of the customers, it can become more expensive, or they just don't even they don't even show you your ads out there. You think you have a performance problem when you actually have an input problem or a data problem. So not everything is a performance problem. I mean, it ultimately it shows itself its ugly head as a performance problem, but the reality is that you have a data problem or an input problem. You're not even giving it the right stuff, and that ends up being a performance problem. But performance is not really your issue. It's the things that lead to a lack of performance, or that the wrong inputs, optimizing for the wrong thing. Now, if you're not sure about what I mean by that, you can ask a question in the chat, or we can ask in the Q&A section at the end. But the reality is that performance, if your performance has been declining 5% every year from ads, it's like the frog in the boiling pot scenario, where it's like it was never necessarily one thing that happened. It was all these different changes happening, user behavior. But in the end, you do have a performance problem. But it might not have ever seemed like it was a performance problem along the way, because it's like these little death by 1,000 cuts, 5% here, raising the temperature in the boiling pot 2 degrees at a time. You don't really feel it. But when you're training AI tools on bad data, all kinds of issues come forward. So what's the new way? It's something that we're introducing, and we're putting basically MeasureU is becoming the clean data company. And the idea here is around clean tracking and having this idea of clean data. And so clean data is an acronym. It means something. I'm going to show you exactly what it means in like one slide. But I want to talk about like where we're going to, or what you'd want to do if you want to consider your data to be clean now, and what adjustments can you make in a post 2021 world. And if you haven't done them yet, it's okay. A lot of people haven't done it yet. Less than half of websites, actually less than 25% of websites are doing any of this stuff. Small businesses, medium businesses, large businesses, a lot of businesses are not implementing this, but in the next 2 years, that's going to change dramatically. And that's part of why we call it the mandate for 2026, because we're going to start a new year pretty quickly here in 15 days. And I want you to know what you can do in the next 15 days so you can start the new year right and you can be on the right track. So the new way to do it is you got to know what you're trying to track. So this is more of a strategic question. What are you actually trying to track? What events are there? What are the key things you need to track? You can install server-side tracking, which is going to give you a pretty significant restoration of your data. It's going to give you a lot of your data back. Then that's going to allow you to send strong performance signals to ad platforms. And even if you're not running ads, it's not just about ads, it's about any traffic driving source. Even strong signals to your email marketing platform is going to make your email perform better. Strong signals to anything that you have out there is going to make it perform better. This allows you to get better results from black box ad platforms, black box anything, and you can eke out a positive ROI or increase your return on investment. And that allows you to remain competitive with advertising and what you're doing and make things perform better. So the idea here is that we're adding some new technology in here, namely strategy around saying what you want to track, technology around server side tracking, and that's allowing us to start sending stronger performance to our ad platforms. Okay. So I mentioned clean data, clean tracking, and I said it's an acronym. And what does it mean? So we believe that there's really 5 parts that you need to focus on if you want to have your data work for you, and if you want to have this idea of measurement. Obviously, we're MeasureU, right? If you want to have measurement be a strength in your organization, there's really 5 areas you can focus on. And some of these are pretty quick fixes, pretty quick things you can do. And other things are sort of a long-term pursuit to keep on getting better. And I look at it this way. So clean, when you think of the word clean, say that you're cleaning your house or you're washing your car. Yeah, the cleanest that your house is going to be is right after the cleaners leave or right after you do a deep clean. And then it just like a little bit keeps on coming in there. That's how the internet works, right? Like you could have perfect data today, but then there's other technologies, external factors. There's browser technologies. There's things that you don't really have much control over that are going to make your data dirty. And so you shouldn't look at this as a one-off thing like, hey, I have clean data now and clean data forever. It's really constantly going through these things like, how is my data collection doing? Is it as good as it can be? So the first part is collection, right? So how is it? Am I collecting the right data? Is it as clean as it can be? Do I know what data I'm collecting? Do I know what platforms are tracking on my site? Do I have pixels that somebody in my company installed 3 years ago and then they left? There's a lot of companies out there that have pixels from people that aren't even in the organization anymore that they set up and they don't know what it means. Actually, I would say almost every site that I've audited or reviewed has that problem, that challenge. Label. Labels really, if you've ever gone through measurement marketing, which was one of the companies that merged into MeasureU, it's a lot about strategy, labeling, making sure that you know what data you have, giving it the right taxonomy, meaning like the right words to explain it to your organization, making sure that it makes sense. It's really the first 30 days that you do measurement marketing is all about making sure that you define what you want to collect. So there's a saying in the woodworking industry, measure twice, cut once, right? Because if you measure twice and you make sure you have it right, you can cut it and you know your cut's going to be good. If you cut something and you do it and you measure it wrong, you can't get that piece of wood back. You can't get that, you can't get whatever that is, that material back because you cut it wrong. I actually did that one time. I had to measure my own granite countertop for my bathroom when I was remodeling it, and I measured wrong. And the guy comes to put it in, and there's a gap of this much on each side. And I was super embarrassed. And I was like, why did you let me measure this thing for you, right? Because I'm sure the professional would have measured it twice and only cut once. I measured it once, they cut once, and I learned that lesson. Probably why I'm not a contractor right now, and why I'm talking to you about internet stuff, right? But ultimately, you need to do that. So I have real world experience where if you don't measure twice and you cut that one time, it could hurt you pretty bad. And so that's really what the labels are. That's why we tell you, like, even though we put collect first, because ultimately, I'm not naive enough to think that you're not collecting data. Every business is collecting some data. It's 2025, heading into 2026. Pixels have been around for 20 plus years, right? Like Google Analytics came out in 2005. So 20 years we've been collecting data. So if a business hasn't been collecting data, I don't even know what to say. I don't know how you even found out how to get onto Zoom to attend this training, right? But ultimately, yes, there's data collections happening, but probably not very optimal. And that's why we put label next. Because even if you've been collecting, once you sort out your labels, you're probably going to need to go back to that collect step. Again, this is a cyclical thing. Your house is never clean forever. It's something where you can do a deep clean, like maybe the labeling helps you do a deep clean on your collection. And yeah, maybe you don't need to really worry about collection for a little while there, until you need to do your next deep clean. And then you can just be on maintenance mode. Okay. Enhance. What about enhance? This is the one that is it can be the shortest one and it can be the longest one depending on what scope you want to take on in making sure your data is clean, how advanced you want to get with enhancing your data, how much you want to leverage new technology, how much you just want to be a participant in this idea of making my data better and work harder for me. So what I mean by that is we mentioned server-side tracking already. We don't look at server-side as like the collection piece. We look at it as an enhancement to your collecting. Why? Because the collection there right now, those are the pixels you had in the past. The enhancement of it is to move to server side to get your data back. It is to do merging between or joining or making your data work between two different platforms, for example, having meta ads talk to your Google Analytics, having your CRM system talk to your Google Ads. That's an enhancement. Even things like getting your data to using connectors, like data connectors to pull things from different systems, that could be an enhancement as well. It could be part of the next step as well. But ultimately, consent, understanding consent banners, understanding how to get optimized for your consent rates, maybe doing some consent rate optimization, doing consent mode, doing implied consent, doing versus explicit consent. All those things are ways to enhance what you're doing. So it's actually really easy to collect the data. That's why we don't spend a ton of time explaining it. And you've already been doing it. It's the labeling and then the enhancement where some of the tough decisions are, but where you can actually, depending on whether you're a service provider, that's where your clients are going to that's where you get sticky with your clients because you're helping them identify the low-hanging fruit and you're fixing it for them, you're enhancing it. And companies do want to invest in enhancement, especially when it's really enhancing their investment in data in general, enhancing their results. They want that. And then also, if you're on the client side, this is something where, meaning that you're doing this, your company's doing this, and you might work with an expert, you might be trying to do this on your own. Enhancement is where you stay busy, where you stay ahead of the competition and everything like that. Because most people don't want to put in the work to enhance what they have. They think that they can just do it once and it's over. So enhancement is it can be pretty expansive, but it's where all the fun stuff happens, if you ask me. Next, we have assemble. The simplest way to look at this thing is assembling the data you have, the data you've collected and then the labels you have, the enhancements you've done into a meaningful dashboard that means something for your company. I mentioned that you could have these data connectors where you're connecting to meta ads and the API. One of the sponsors of our Measure Summit conference was called Power My Analytics. They can help you assemble your data and enhance your data. We work with Analytics Canvas. That's a technology that's somewhere in between enhance and assemble. Basically, getting you all the data you need in one spot so you can create some kind of meaningful dashboard. Now, if you've been with measurement marketing for a long time, you know that labeling, assembling, very, very big part of what we've taught. And we've taught everything. And Data-Driven U, which is a company that I started that merged into MeasureU, we've taught all these things as well. And so really, this is just a way of taking all the stuff that we've taught and helping you explain how it fits into a linear journey. And the other thing is that so many of us have been treated as our work here as like a one-off thing as opposed to an ecosystem. And I really do believe that clean, if you can embrace this and you understand it and you can talk to your company internally or to your clients and explain to them the analogy around, yes, deep cleans need to happen a couple times a year, but clean is something that you need to maintain, then they understand that it's not a one-off investment. And I think that's really gonna, we want to shift everybody's mindset to say this is not a one-off thing. This is an ongoing thing. And yes, you don't always need to have the same degree of cleanliness, but that's the conversation you should be having. Not like, hey, I thought that I installed Google Analytics and it's over. I built that dashboard once and it's not there. And that's really compounded even more by this end part, which is narrate, which is really what are we seeing from the data? How do we make sense of it? What should our company do? What action should happen? It's really the human element. Now, as you can probably imagine, in an AI prolific world, some of these things are getting easier and easier. Deciding what your labels might be is easier and easier if you're working side by side with an AI chatbot and you have some of the resources that we share at MeasureU. Like we have a table that says, how should you label events, or what are the ways that each major platform labels events? Julie from our team produced that, and it's right inside the community. So make sure you check that out. But the idea is here's the translation table between things. And so that can be AI enhanced and AI accelerated. One thing AI is not the best at is the narration, and it probably won't be for a long time. Now, I'm going to show you a little hack on narration a little bit later in this presentation, but that we use, but that's just sort of like how this all, how it all comes together. So the idea here is this is something where, yes, you can go in a linear way, and then you have clean data. Clean data is something that needs to be maintained, and just like cleaning your house, you probably need to have somebody come into your house once a month, or some people want to have a cleaner in their house once a week. Some people have a live-in housekeeper or a maid. And you know what? Yeah, depending on your budget, you can have any one of those things. You can have the daily cleaning, somebody living in your house, right? That's going to be your own data team, or having a key data team. That's probably going to cost you over $10,000 a month. It starts at 10K a month for that. You want to have the weekly maintenance. That's going to be probably something that is going to be more like $5,000 a month to have people checking in and out, weekly calls and updates and things like that. And that's either you hire somebody or you hire an agency, right? Then if you want that monthly one, it's going to be maybe a little bit less than that, And then maybe it's 2,000 a month to have monthly, and that's your monthly report. That's checking, doing mini audits on your data and things like that. Maybe that's something that you can set up and do on your own. And then finally, if you want like a once a year thing, it's probably do it yourself, and you do it when you do it and you get around to it. It could cost you nothing, but also you have a not very clean house for 11 months of the year. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit more in depth in this thing and get into our audit now. So the next thing we want to do is our mini audit. Okay, so I'm going to get right into the action here after explaining the framework. And really, we have 5 simple questions, and it's around the 5 elements of clean data. So the first thing is, when you're talking about collecting data, do you know which platforms are currently tracking your website on your website? So, and you can either do this manually with whatever tool you like. Stape, who's one of our sponsors that sponsors some of our content, we've done a course with them. They also have this free website tracking checker that I'd recommend that you take a look at as well. I'm going to drop that link in the chat, and you can use that to see what platforms are tracking on your site. And while we do that, I'm going to go ahead and get back to my presentation. So I just dropped the link in the chat. You should see that now. And let me get this slideshow back up and running. Okay. So question number 1, which you should be able to see. Actually, you can't see it because I need to reshare my screen. And then you can go ahead and rate yourself. You can put it in the chat, or you can just keep your own notes on it. So if you don't know what pixels are on your site right now, or you haven't checked in a while, that's a 0. Okay, you can give yourself a 0. If you know a couple things you have, but you're not positive what they are, so meaning like, I'm pretty sure Google Analytics is on there, I'm pretty sure I have a metapixel, but you're not confident, give yourself a 1. If you know most of the platforms because you're checking them and you know that you did it, or you did it maybe 3 months ago, maybe you cleaned the house, but you haven't really been paying attention to it, give yourself a 2. And if you can list everything and you know that they're working properly because you're in it, you're like that in-house housekeeper, then good for you. Give yourself a 3. So again, I'm not sure if the chat's working properly or not, but you can definitely leave that in the chat for yourself. Give yourself a rating in the chat. Awesome. All right, I got some 3s there. That's good to know. I'm guessing the 3s are doing this for their clients. Some 1s, some 2s. Okay, good to know. Excellent. And I just noticed that there was a question in the Q&A. So while you're getting your comments in, John said, what is a black box ad platform? What I specifically mean by a black box ad platform is the shift both in Google ads and Facebook ads to try to find customers for you without giving you control over how you find them. So specifically, Performance Max is like a black box. Like you basically say, I want to do Performance Max, And then they'll go out there and they'll run your ad across multiple formats, multiple channels, and you sort of don't really get to choose your settings nearly as much. And so their vast preferences are to go towards, you know, they're to go towards making it a black box for you so that you just pay money and they get you the result. There's all kinds of quotes from Mark Zuckerberg, that says that's exactly what they want. They said that we don't want you to have to worry about creative. We just want you to put your URL in there and we'll do the rest. That's where he wants to head in 2026. They want that to happen. And they're saying that with AI, it's going to make it possible. They're betting that their AI and their knowledge of ads in the black box is going to be better than what we could do on our own. Okay. Awesome. Thanks for giving me your rating, everybody. Let's go on to the next one. Label. So, labeling. Do you have a short, clear list of your key conversions, and does everybody agree on it? Meaning, are you all tracking a purchase? Are you all do you agree what a qualified lead is, or a lead in general? A booked call? Like, what are do you have the same key? I use the word key conversions because that's sort of like key events in GA slash conversion events in the different ad platforms. So 0 if you don't know what they are, you don't define them. 1 if every platform has its own things, like, hey, I'm tracking this as a conversion on GA4. I'm tracking this as a conversion on Meta ads, and they're different, or they're not. You don't really know how to translate them. If you have some overlap in your definitions, like, okay, we're overlapping a little bit here. And then finally, define and consistent everywhere. So, you're using the same language everywhere. You know that a purchase is a purchase across the different platforms. All right, you guys are too good. You might not need much, but we'll see what happens when you get into enhancement. Okay, so awesome. I see a bunch of answers in here. It looks like you're all doing a pretty good job. So you can total your score. We're going to do this on a scale of 15, as you can probably imagine. So in your mind, just total it up, your score for the C and for the L, and let me know where you think you are. Okay. Enhance. Do you have any first party conversion tracking turned on for ads? Meaning Meta Conversion API, Google's enhanced conversions, you're using the TikTok Events API, anything that sends first party data. Now, if you don't know what first party data is, because I haven't defined it for you, that's totally cool. The idea would be that you're tracking these things with probably with server side tracking. Okay, this is pretty specifically going to be around server side. So you're using the Meta Conversions API to send conversions. You're doing anything along those lines. You're sending a strong signal. And we would call third party, meaning that you're using a client side pixel, like the pre-2021 stuff, where Meta ads would just have a pixel for you and you'd put it on there and it would just magically work. Okay, so this is going to be specifically around not relying on a browser tracking pixel, an old school one, and relying more on server side. Okay, so if you only use browser pixels, you can give yourself a 0. There's nothing wrong with that, but you can give yourself a 0. Okay. Number one, give yourself a 1 if you're not sure if there's any first tracking setup, ready tracking setup, or if you have conversions API only, for example. Yes, for number 2, if it's set up for at least one major ad platform, so you give yourself a 1.5 or a 2 there. And then if it's consistently across all your main ad platforms, that's cool as well. That's a 3. Now I see a lot of 2s, 2.5s. I see some 3s. Julie, that's awesome. Julie Matson. That's strong. Like, ultimately, if you get a 15 out of 15, you can say to yourself, I have clean data, at least according to how we look at it. Is that you are checking these things. Now, the controversial thing about clean data might be that when we think about clean data, I don't know about you, but the controversial thing is thinking that data can ever be clean, that it can ever be clean. But I had to change my thinking to think, actually, nothing's ever clean. It's as soon as the cleaners leave the house. I have a 6-year-old, and as soon as the cleaners leave the house, I have to tell him that he can't get his toys out because I need at least one day where this house stays clean. So we have like a 24-hour rule where we're like, hey, you know what, man? You got to just watch a show or go outside and play because I want this house to stay clean for 24 hours. That's actually one of our rules every time that the cleaners come because dude, you're just you got stuff all over the place. What are you doing? This house needs to stay clean for 24 hours. And that's sort of how I look at this. So yes, you might have clean data today. It's not like if I'm telling you you get a 15 out of 15 today, you have clean data according to Jeff Sauer, but it doesn't mean you have clean data tomorrow, right? So I'm not saying that it's a permanent thing. Okay. I think I'm pretty clear on that. But I also, this is the first time I've ever really shared this outside of calls with our team members. So I'm just like, does this make sense? And sometimes saying it out loud to other people helps you either say, yeah, it makes sense or no, it doesn't. So actually, I'd love a little reality check here. Is this hitting for you? Like just to start thinking about it this way? Are these analogies working for you? Is it making sense how we're progressing through this? The other thing is, as we're progressing through it, the other thing I would say is that there's less chance that these other things are done because if you can't do steps one and two, if you can't collect data, then you can't really enhance it, right? You can't do the further steps, right? So it's all right if your scores decline. That's actually expected. But the cool thing is whether you're on the service provider side or if you're doing this in-house for your business, either way, a declining score, it's empowering because one, it shows you that you were focused on the beginning, which was all you had to do in the past is you put a pixel on your site and you can collect, and then everything else sort of just falls into line. And that's not all you had to do, but it was a big part of what you had to do. Now you can be like, oh yeah, this is more complex than anybody thinks. And that's why I've had to focus in this area here or there, right? The other thing is if you're doing this for your company and your agency only focuses on the beginning, you should be like, dude, this is actually like that's so easy. We need to get further along. Now, it might mean that you have to upgrade the quality of agency you have, the people you're working with, because they don't know how to do it. It might mean that you need to be more of a leader with them, upgrading your skills. It might cost a little bit more to do something, but also that clean data, it's not a cost that it's a cost that gets recuperated in results. This is why so many of the slides mention ads. Even if you're not running ads, ads is the easiest way to explain this to your company because you are investing in advertising. You have to pay money to play with ads. And so the only way, and so anything that you're investing needs to have a return, and this protects your return on investment. It's almost like insurance on something or, a hedge. It's like hedging your bet. Like, hey, I'm going to put all this money into the stock market, the ad platforms of the stock market, and then tracking and measurement is like your bonds. You're putting it into U.S. bonds, which may not be a good hedge right now, but you're hedging your portfolio. Like if you look at portfolio strategy, you don't ever want to go 100% into one basket because it can go away. But if ads are the 80% the U.S. high growth stocks or whatever that is, and then 20% bonds in your profile, that's the measurement. That might be one way to look at it too. Especially if you're an investor, that might make sense to you if you ever sat in one of those pitches about balanced portfolio strategy. All right, so I haven't gone through the criteria, but let's do it right now. So let's talk about assemble a little bit. So assemble means that you have a dashboard that you check to understand your marketing performance. It could be the measurement marketing dashboard that we have at MeasureU, where we have the eyes in the journey and we're seeing where people are dropping off. We're tracking a funnel. We're seeing what sources are working. We have this thing we look at least on a monthly basis. Okay. So if you have a bunch of different tools and none of them talk to each other and you don't even really look at the interface, that's a 0. If you use GA4 or if you use the ads UI and that's how you do your reporting, but nothing's talking to each other, and they're just different reports that you're manually pulling data into a spreadsheet, for example, and maybe you have some rudimentary charts that give yourself a 1. If you have a central dashboard where you're connecting at least 2 data sources together and you're showing ads alongside of your analytics data, for example, that could be good. And then if you have ads, analytics together, and all bunch of different stuff, you can give yourself a 3. Now, one of the questions that I one of the things that I wanted to mention here is that this is one of the reasons why people don't get a 3 here is because this does add an extra expense. Okay. So this adds an extra expense if you're doing this. You have to pay for the connectors. Although Power My Analytics is pretty reasonably priced. There are some connectors that will connect to your Meta ads or your Google. Well, Google Ads is built into Looker Studio. There's connectors that are less than $100 a month, and those might be the ones that you're looking at specifically. So, but yeah, that's the thing. Are you using? Did you create a dashboard? Does it make sense, and are you using it? I see the question about APIs. I think that yeah, I think Alina is doing a good response. But is API impossible with client side? If you're specifically talking about conversion API, the conversions API, I believe that the pixel, if you just go to Meta Ads and you take a pixel and you install it client side like through Google Tag Manager, that still uses the conversions API, just that it's like a version of it. It's just not as good. Like so, for example, Google Analytics always uses the measurement protocol. It's just whether or not that measurement protocol has a strong signal or not, which may or may not. I mean, that starts to end up being a pretty deep explanation. So maybe I shouldn't open up that can of worms. But basically, Google Analytics runs on the convert or on the that they run on the same measurement protocol, whether you're doing it client side, server side, or whatever. It's just that client side has all the disadvantages of getting blocked. So whether they're using conversions API, the problem is that not every conversion comes through. Hopefully that makes sense. N is for narrate. Do your reports regularly declare what do we do next action? The dream, right? So no, we mostly just look at numbers or we put numbers out there, but we're not saying what to do next, or occasionally, but not consistently. That's a one. The first one was zero. I might have said one, but I meant zero. Two, yes, we take actions from the data. And three, it's a regular habit tied to KPIs. So you're one of those companies that's like everything's tied to a KPI. Now I worked with HubSpot, and they're like a 3 out of 3 on this one. I did that. I helped them set up all their Google Analytics infrastructure, and they were so on the ball with everything they did. Like it was in their culture. It's like the one company that I've worked with that was like that. Most companies are not really on the ball where it's like they have their own KPIs tied to the dashboard and stuff like that. A lot of agencies don't feel empowered to do the narration either because it's too much, it's extra time that they don't get to pay they don't get to charge for, or it's because they're dealing with the other four parts, the C.L.E.A. parts of their clients, and they can't really get to that point, right? So this is the one that usually, I mean, when I first started in this industry 20 years ago, I was 90% doing C and L, and that was it. 10% everything else, you know? Now I think that that's actually like C and L, you can get done in less than a month, easily less than a month. You can get done with a few chats. Enhance takes a while because it's a never ending thing to just always enhance your data to find new low hanging fruit to pick. Server side, we're going to be doing something I believe in February where it's like in 90 minutes you can get server side up and running. And then assemble, people get dashboards, but they usually give up because the dashboards aren't really related back to their labeling and their objectives for their company. So they create it, but then they're like, nobody looks at it. That's usually the sign of a bad assembly or a bad dashboard is that nobody looks at it. And then the run in the future, there's just not a lot of organizations that are really, it just is such a Herculean task that they're not spending as much time there. But I see that I think that if you were to just reset your line of thinking to the modern technology that's out there and the new way of doing things, I think you'd find that you actually do more time narrating than ever. If you just said, "Hey, I'm not going to overthink the other parts. I just want to get to the action." Because that's sort of what the AI world's bringing to us anyway, is that it's just allowing us to bring it. It's like we're not doing as much busy work. So that when I said 90% of my time was a technical piece, I think it's maybe 10% technical now, doing analysis for companies, for marketing campaigns, for marketing, and the rest of it is a lot of it is it's really the assembly and the narration is where it could be, or that's where it needs to be, or opportunity. And plus, this is again, this is where you can translate this to revenue more often than not. So this can have an ROI on it too. And the other thing is they call it human in the loop with AI. Narration is your human in the loop. You are the human that's interpreting things. Okay. So my pro tip for this, for the narration piece, is to use MCPs. We did a 3-day workshop on MCPs at MeasureU in October. Manisha led it. It was fantastic. Um, I use it all the time. I use the guide she gave and that she put out there. So if you're a pro member, you have access to it. You have the MCP guide as well, which gets you it installed in there. And I'm using MCPs all the time. And two examples. One is there's a prompt in there right around page 50 that says, "Tell me where my AI traffic is coming from," and it will just give you all your AI bot traffic that you receive from ChatGPT. So if you ever want to know how much AI SEO we're doing, or AEO, whatever you want to call it, that prompt is right in there, and your MCP server can do it with just copy paste once you've connected to Google Analytics. I used it the other day and I was just on a mastermind with the community. So a lot of you just heard this like 2 hours ago. But I used it to tell me exactly what pages I had the most views, and then what lead magnet is on them. And it created an entire table for me by crawling my website and telling me what forms were on there and which ones needed to be updated. It's pretty cool stuff. Okay, so what we're gonna do now, and so yes, check that out inside the community as well. Now, time to tally our score and let me know in the chat where you're at. So if you're a 0 to 5, then you're in the danger zone, or your company's in the danger zone, especially if you're spending money on ads. I would stop doing it right now, and I would get some of these fixes in place. 6 to 10, that's where you're starting to leak profit, and you are probably losing money on the campaigns that you do, and there's an opportunity to come in place. I'm guessing that most are in that 6 to 10 range. And then if you're in 11 to 15, your data foundation is solid, meaning that you are in a good position to be able to take advantage of this. You're doing the right things. You're implementing what we teach here. You're doing this. You're doing well by your clients, and so on and so forth. So awesome if you're at that point, that's great. Let a little bit of time for people to jump in with their scores. See Rob's over 12. That's great. I'm guessing Julie will be there as well. Scott's a 10, Zach's a 10, June's a 10, Gwen's a 8. Yeah. Tony at the 1, but that's all right. We know that you're getting, this is the first step, right? The first step is to do this and to start to see where you are, to understand. Actually, this is step 0, if you will. Julie at 14, I think you're our high achiever here. Leanne, we see a 5. Yeah. So, okay, excellent. Well, thanks everybody for sharing your assessments and putting that out there. What I want to end on, not fully end on because I still have some more slides, but I want to talk about what is the step 1 fix. Like we all showed here to figure out what step 1 is. Like we have 15 days left in the year. It's holiday season for many of us. We're not gonna be able to do everything, right? We're not gonna be able to do everything like on day 1. But there's one thing you can do. You can do a step 1. If you look at like Atomic Habits, that's a great book to read, by the way, if you're looking for some year-end reading. But Atomic Habits doesn't say they say don't try to run a marathon. Focus on putting your shoes next to your bed. So when you get out of bed, you associate that with running. And then you can start to get to that point. So you create smaller goals for yourself, and you start to develop the habit. Whatever you do here is all about the habit. So you go down the path and you go from N backwards and you say, where did I get my lowest score? And failed is maybe the wrong word. I shouldn't have said failed there, but if you didn't like your score for C, then we should fix our tagging or really revisit that part. If we're on the E part and we're like, yeah, we have labels, we're clear, but we haven't updated it for 2021 or for beyond 2021 for the modern world, then you can start your server-side migration, for example. If you're not assembling your data, then really clearly dashboards, if you find the use case for why a dashboard is important and why it's useful, that'll be helpful. There's so many resources inside MeasureU Pro about how to assemble, and how to do all the planning and everything. Actually, everything in the clean data It's embodied in courses we've already produced. And then we actually have a whole bunch of new stuff, new live trainings, workshops, and so on that are going to only just enhance that more because they're going to be built with clean data with clean data and the framework in mind. So stick with us, and everything you see will be aligned with this idea of clean data. And everything we've done in the past is aligned with clean data. It's just not specific to clean data because this is the first time we've ever shared this in a presentation to the public. Okay, we've teased it. I've written about it in emails. I did it on stage 2 weeks ago, but this is the first time we've actually shared this with the community. So now, if I were to say there's one upgrade that has the most benefits, it's server side. I, I might sound like a broken record if you've read the emails we put out there. We did a course called the Server Side Blueprint, very well attended. A lot of people really enjoyed it. It demystified it for a lot of people. But just in a nutshell, here's why it's important. It runs tracking through your server instead of the browser. So I explain that more in depth, and that is that it's bypassing the need from a browser. So it's sending it to the server regardless of what the browser chooses to do, and that gives you more control, and it makes it so that it's not as easy to block because your server is serving up the pages, and so people can't choose whether or not your pages are going to be served up. You sort of do that in the back end in your code. Gives you more control before data is sent to other platforms like GA4, Facebook, and more. You can actually decline sending data to these platforms versus if you're using client side, unless you basically, as long as they give you consent, you can choose what data gets sent. So there's more opportunity to refine the data that you send and have more control over it, which is good because control equals propriety, and propriety equals ownership, meaning that you own this. You own what you're doing, you own the process, you have more control and ownership over something, especially as we move to a first party world where first party data is the king. It's actually just sitting on a predictions call for 2026 right before this call. And the big thing he said is like mini GPT or mini, like your own GPTs instead of big, large language models. He called it small language models. I thought that was a good way to look at it. I think that with MCP servers, your own data and control of your data, you're sort of creating your own mini GPT that then you can use the big GPTs to do a lot of that, those low level tasks like editing, writing, assembling into a table, things that you used to have an assistant do, like ChatGPT is your assistant. And then allows you to enhance, assemble, filter, or eliminate data as needed as well, which is nice. Now, this is a stat I came across this last week, and I've shared it with everybody that I can share it with. Julie shared it earlier today on our roundtable discussion, and that is just the adoption of server side and how fast it's happened and how fast it's going to happen. So that it was a glimmer in our eye in 2021, almost entirely implemented by people in Germany, Austria, and the Central European area, because of GDPR. Then iOS, then it was advertisers, like heavy advertisers on Meta ads. Meta ads, I remember if you look at their documentation, they've been recommending server-side GTM since 2020 or 2021. So they were the first. So it's like advertisers, and that's it. Now it's starting to get more widely adopted by small businesses in general. SMB means small to medium businesses. I highly doubt that in 2025 that we've achieved 20 to 25%, maybe of advertisers, but not of all businesses. There's just no way. It's not that prominent, especially in the US. But either way, whether you believe that it's 5%, that means it's just a bigger opportunity for growth. Or if you believe that it is 20%, this is saying that by 2027, it's going to 3x. So 3 times as many people are going to be implementing it. And I think that's a huge opportunity for all of us. If you're a service provider, it's a huge opportunity. If you're doing this for your own company and you haven't been sure about server side, I mean, the answer now is that you're going to fall behind. You're going to be the minority that are doing this if you don't do it in the next 2 years. So you might as well do it now. You might as well get some reps in there while you have our ear and while you're working with us. So we use Stape. That's our partner right now for server-side tracking. They're managed hosting for Tag Manager. So one thing about server-side is that it is server-side Google Tag Manager, and Stape is what creates it's called a container, but it's like a mini server that they spin up that 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 they host for you. Basically, for lack of a better term, they host it for you, and then you connect it to Google Tag Manager to do all your tracking. You can skip doing things like Amazon and Google Cloud setup. Google Cloud is really complicated. I tried to set it up and I like ripped my hair out back in 2021. Stape's much easier to use. And then there's advanced tools. This is what I mean by like having more control over your data. You probably don't know what any of these things mean, but they might be interesting to help you with reducing ad blocker interference. Case in point, here's a case study on our own site, on our Profit School site. We installed Stape and we recovered 8% of our traffic, actually almost 9% of our traffic. Now, this is on a non-advertising site in the US. We've seen companies do as much as 40% or more data recovered in the EU from using server-side tracking. And if you're a heavy advertiser, you'll see higher numbers. And then Stapes from their own website, 40% reduction in direct revenue, 30% increase in Google Ads conversion. So it's not just Meta ads, even though I've mentioned that a lot. Your Google Ads conversion match is going to go up. Email marketing revenue, maybe you never even thought about server side being able to recuperate email marketing revenue attribution. But yes, it works on everything because it's giving you your data back. It's reducing direct. Direct traffic essentially means we don't know where it came from or it wasn't tagged with UTM codes or tagged properly. And that, the direct is going to be part of the problem. You just want to get that number to be as low as possible. And when I started in this world, direct was like 5 to 10%. And then it was like, oh, it's 15 to 20%, and it's always going to be that area. Now we're seeing companies that are like at 40, 50, 60% direct. And it ultimately means I don't know. I don't know what to do with 40 to 50 to 60% of the traffic because I don't know where it came from. So I can't go and spend more money on that channel. And it's not even about spending more money on that channel and attribution. Attribution immediately tells you that your ad performance is working better, and then you put more money into ads or email or and so on. So that's the effect of it. And you don't have as many new users showing up because you're improving your user recognition. So there's two questions in here. Tony says, do I need to be thinking server side if my overall score is a 1? I think that there's more you can do earlier, Tony, before worrying about server side. Now, here we always talk about trends and patterns being the focus or directional data. So if you install client-side tracking and you send 100 people to your site and 30% of them are blocked by pixel or by ad blockers and all that stuff, third-party cookie blocks, whatever, not having consent, you still have 70 people on your site that you can use to extrapolate what that 100% would have been. And that's good and that's useful information. Now, if your company and that there's nothing wrong with that. Like that's where you should start is on that 70% of the data you do collect, figuring out what's working and what's not is what I would do. Now, if you get to the point where you're like, I'm actually losing a lot by not having that extra 30%, that's where server side kicks in. If you find that the opportunity cost of not having it is higher than the value of just having directional data, that's when you want to make that investment. Now, the stats are showing that in the next 2 years, people are going to find that opportunity cost is weighing too much, and they're going to make that investment. The majority of people who are advertising and running businesses that have an online component. So that domino is falling in the next 2 years. Might be, I mean, it's not next week or 2 weeks from now when 2026 starts, but it's in the next 2 years. And I'm going to be one of the people that's making that happen because I'm talking about it all the time because the writing's on the wall that we need to do this. And the people who are doing it, it's like they see clearly now as a result. June says, how does server side reduce direct traffic? So in a nutshell, June, these things that are coming from ad blockers and tracking prevention, or if they strip out my UTM codes, meaning that there's like a redirect, because like Safari will automatically strip out UTMs, I believe, on like mobile devices. This will show up, this stuff that we recovered would have showed up as direct tracking because they strip out our UTM, our conversion codes, or our G.C.L.E.A.N for Google Ads or our FB.C.L.E.A.D. Those things get stripped out by these browsers. Well, when you're on server side, they can't strip it out because it's still in your URL, right? The browser doesn't have a choice. So as long as it's in the URL, server side just tucks that away and keeps it there, and then it brings it back. Okay. So that's why it happens. Okay. So if you're spending more than 5K ads in a month, server side gives you reliable tracking, can be done with limited technical hassle by using a product like Stape and by using the MeasureU resources, and allows you to focus on optimizing your marketing and advertising without worrying about broken results. Which again, if you think that that delta between 70% and 100% is going to make you better, then that's when you want to make that investment. So there's three ways you can make this. I have like two more slides left, and really the call to action is just an opportunity to book a call with me. So if you want to talk to me about what your step one should be, because there's a lot of good questions in here, I'm making my calendar open for like a 15-minute call in about two slides from now. So the hard way is to do this all by yourself, right? Learning it all yourself. The expensive way might be to hire an agency. And then MeasureU exists because we can give you courses on how to do this. I mean, most of you are actually MeasureU Pro members, so I don't really need to sell you on it. You've already invested and joined MeasureU Pro. But if you're not, just take a second to explain to you what we do. So we have courses, our server-side blueprint course. You can watch that, and it will teach you. It's like a 6-part thing about everything you need to do to install server-side. The MCP workshop, we have our Measure Mastermind every Wednesday. That's coming up tomorrow. You can ask questions. We do have done for you services as well. A lot of people don't know that because we've never emphasized it. But in 2026, we're going to be taking on more clients to just do it for them. And there's two different ways we do that. One is we do something called clean data coaching. And clean data coaching is where we do it with you. You actually do the work, but our experts are there with you every step of the way to make sure you push the right buttons, that you click on the right things, that you do the right stuff, and that we help verify your data. But it's more like a personal trainer. We don't lift the weights for you, but we help you make sure that we tell you what workouts you need to do and what nutrition plan you need, and then you're going to be healthier and more fit and in the best shape of your life. That's what the clean data coaching does. And then we also have just clean data services where we are your agency that helps you get clean data. And then depending on what your definition of clean is and how frequently you want it, that's how much it costs, essentially based on how much effort there is. And so those are all things we can do for you as well. So clean data, it's right inside of MeasureU Pro, inside of our community, courses, all that stuff. And then also there's done for you services. So I'll just say this to anybody. Are you ready to get clean data by January 1st, or at least take your first step? I think you should all be pretty clear on which one of the letters is where you need the most focus and what to do with it. And if not, that's why I want to have the opportunity to talk to people. So just really easy. And this is not like a sales thing at all. I just want to get on the call. I want to get on calls to talk to people about clean data, about your results. I want to find out what problems people are facing, because that's going to help us make our business better in 2026, because we'll be focusing on the right things. We'll be teaching the right things, the area, the stuff that we need to focus on. So if you're like, hey, where do I even start? I will help you figure out what your step one is. And then I'll tell you just an honest assessment as to whether you should do it, whether you need our community, whether you can get it from coaching faster, or whether you should hire somebody to do it. And I'll give you the honest answer. I would say that like more people need the community than need coaching, than need us to do it for them. But it really depends on the size of your company, how much you're spending on ads. It usually becomes pretty clear based on your criteria and what you're working on. So you can see it on the screen, just measureu.com/clean call. That'll get right onto my calendar. I've opened up a few slots for the rest of this week and then next week. I just want to hear what problems we have, and you will walk away with what your step one should be based on what I know about you and what you know about yourself and what we know about clean data. So that's what I have for you. Thank you for joining. I thought this was going to be about a 20-minute presentation. It ended up being an hour. Sorry if you thought that it was too much talking, but hopefully you enjoyed it and you have a pretty good idea. And if if the big thing was convincing your organization that you needed something and you need to focus on it, now you have a score that you can give to yourself to see, how did I score? And if you like that scorecard idea, I think we're going to be creating like a little interactive scorecard, so you can constantly check that thing and see how you're doing as well in the new year. Thank you, June. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Alina, awesome. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, everybody, for being a part of this community and for joining. If you're not part of the community, thanks for jumping on, for reading my emails and signing up. That's awesome. We had over 50% attendance rate, which never happens on training. So I'm just glad that you all decided to come here. Thanks, Anne, and thanks you all. And yeah, you know where to find me. Book a call with me if you want to. If you want to just talk some more. And I appreciate everybody that gave us an hour of your time. And we will see you the next time. We'll see you soon. Cheers.